Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So, stay with us as right now we present. And good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you are. I hope everybody's doing well today, and we got a great show for you today. A wonderful author who is a producer, and she's done all kinds of stuff, and she's a screenwriter, and she also just finished having her first book signing for her new book. And it was a lot of fun. She got to be the prima donna, the gal of the hour. Her name is Moshaty, and she's with us today. She is in. We're hoping that we're not going to have a thunderstorm go over top of you, and because you're in New York, and the weather, you'd think it's August, it's supposed to be sunny, but not.
We've had such a wet summer, but we're also in what we call hurricane season, so we always get the aftermath of whatever the south is having when it moves upward. So we kind of are at the mercy of that as well. So it's fingers crossed on the day if the sun is going to stay shining or not. So right now it's no.
Well, and you had a bit of a brownout, so I'm glad we made it, and we're doing well. So, tell me about the there are lots and lots of us that are listening to this that have never had the opportunity to write a book and then go and have a book signing and talk to people about the work that you're doing. And what is that like to be the center of attention like that?
Oh, it's weird. It's not weird and in a bad way, but what's interesting about it is that, and I don't know if any other author feels this way, I can only speak from my own experience, but writing a book, once you put that out there and you're like, this is my baby and I worked really hard for it, and then people start to review it, and either good or bad, and I'm very, very lucky that I've had from middle of the road to very, very good reviews on it, which is great so far, fingers crossed, knock on wood. But you get there and you're like, wait, people are actually going to read it and then have something to say about it? Because that never really crosses your mind when you're writing. I mean, I'm sure it does from time to time, but when you're done and you just think, okay, now it's out there. And then when people enjoy it, it's a very interesting feeling. It's a very positive feeling, but it is also very much like, I did that. Like my words touch somebody in a certain way, or, they might talk to somebody about, how they like the story, and then your work kind of moves on through other people, which I think is in itself a legacy. Whether or not it's on a huge publishing scale or it's a smaller indie press like mine, which still does a lot of movement. But I think, especially with the book signing, it was like, not only do people like it, but they're also interested in me, which is like, now I got to talk about myself in relation to the work. And that is very, very fun. But I will say, like, by the end of it, it's a little bit draining because you're on that whole time, and you want to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward and giving the best information and the best representation of yourself. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a little bit emotionally and mentally draining. But at the end of the day, like, you come home and you're like, okay, like, what's next? Like, what's the next mountain? Because there's always another book coming out, or there's always going to be another interview to do, or another place to kind of talk about that. And you live in that world until your next work comes out. And then you're talking about something different, still obviously yourself, but it's a very surreal feeling, and it's a very busy feeling. Like, it's not stagnant at all. It's very high movement. Even as I sit in this chair, I'm like, I feel like I should be doing something.
You are doing something
that I put aside or forgotten about. But no, it's a good feeling. It's very busy, but it's very good busy.
did you ever stop and think, like when you're in your car on the way to the signing or the next signing that you're going to do, or talking to your publisher or talking to people who've read the book, did you ever stop to think, holy crap, I created this from nothing?
Mhm. Yeah, most days. Most days I do. And it's funny because you are always asked that question, any author in a book, especially in the horror genre, um, predominantly you'll get the question of like, how did you come up with a story like that? Or like, that's a really scary story. Like, did this happen to somebody that you know? Like my mother had asked me, like, did you read these stories in the newspaper and then you wrote a story? But I'm like, no, these are like stories that came out of my own head. And she and she has had the best response to that of anyone that has asked me that so far. And she went, why? And it was almost like, you know, I thought I was doing all the right things with my kids. Um, it was like, where did I go wrong with her? But that's what the
She's,
feeling I
she's,
got personally was like, "Ooh."
she's got to be like, that child is dark. How did she get so
Yeah,
dark?
that girl ain't right. Yeah, I know. But I mean, to be fair, when we talked about it, I said, to be fair, it was a latchkey kid. Like you weren't home, you were working, you were going to night school in my early years for, your degrees and things. And I was watching and reading scary stuff. And then here we are. Um, so she was like, oh, well, I was just wondering because they're very interesting and they're very intricate. So yeah, it's a blessing and a curse having to explain how you've gotten to the story. But it's fun. It's fun getting to talk about how it came from a very embryonic idea to something that is now um a few people's favorite stories. So that feels very, very good.
Well, it's like my family. This is kind of the same thing. It's like, what made you think of this to do positive talk and to do what you do? What got into your head? Why did you do? And it's like, I don't know. It just this is what I felt called to do. And so talking to people like you is I really enjoy
Yeah.
understanding the process that
Yes.
you've taken on to go through all of this. And it's like, I hate to say, it's kind of like giving birth.
It
uh,
is.
so I not that I
Not
not
that
that I'd
I
have any
mean, you're
idea.
super familiar with the birthing process, I'm sure.
I well, we would call me and most men an interested bystander,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
we didn't
We
get a chance.
did not have a chance yet to do those things, but it's a very um it's a building process. It's a living, breathing thing that's always on your mind, and you're always constructing how to do it better, or even when it's a finished product, you kind of have to stand back and kind of let it be what it's going to be, very much like a child, right? You can only do so much rearing, and then you kind of have to let it be what it's going to be in the world. And it's such an interesting um, position to be in, because you can not only be very hopeful about where it's going and how it's received, but also standing back and being like, if I could do this, there's all these other things that I can create as well. So it's a very motivating piece too.
Now you've been doing what you would call horror,
Yes.
and but also with the twist that it is a lot of suspense.
Yes.
Um, so you utilize that genre to
Mhm.
come up with the suspense that is part of that, and
Mhm.
who's going to get it and who's not going to get it, and how, and all that kind of stuff. And if you didn't do horror, what other would you do? Uh, Romance? Would you do?
No,
Um,
I'd probably do comedy. I came from mostly horror and comedy writing from the screenwriting world, which I think on two different swings of the pendulum back and forth, they're very similar because you're looking for a reaction out of somebody. In both comedy and horror, right? You're looking to do something or pull something out of somebody. So I think I would do mostly comedy. Now, comedy literary writing, I don't know. I don't know if that's my strong suit as of yet, only because my comedy writing is very physical and it's very quick. So I don't really know where I would start with that, but I really, really enjoy it. Also science fiction. They kind of go hand in hand with the horror that I do, but I love science fiction stories and science fiction work. So I would love to get into doing more of that as well.
So when you talk about science fiction, would you be talking about space travel or
Yeah.
because there's lots of different ways that
Oh
you
yeah.
know what you could
Sci-fi.
do? I know what we're gonna have you do next. We're, we're gonna have you do a horror science fiction comedy.
There we go. Spaceballs.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's
Now,
something like that.
now,
Um,
when you were writing a
mhm,
screenplay,
mhm.
or you are working, and I don't know if you've done this or not, but if you're working with um, like a Jay Leno or somebody, and you're on the
Sure.
comedy writing team, how does the comedy come to you? Is it like easy? Is it hard? Do you just kind of how do you make up a joke? I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh, geez. I think for me, at least in my screenwriting, um, it's all about building the character first. And it's, going through, and I think we might have touched on this the last time that I was here, but it was building character bios and seeing what their likes and dislikes and their motivations are, and kind of what makes them tick. And also in that, you're going to find out what they find funny and what they don't, and what is their pain points. And is somebody using their pain points as the punchline? Are they the joke? And then you start to expand on the world after that. But I think building a joke is very, very hard. Like, if it's not character based, that's why I find sketch comedy so fascinating, because you have a limited time to create a character, have somebody understand the character, and then somebody understand why the joke from the character is funny. It's a really, really hard job. It's a really, really hard job, because it's not like we have time like a sitcom to like grow with these characters, or even monologue jokes. Monologue jokes are usually very prescient, very timely, something that just happened this past week, or something that has been kind of in the culture as like a phenomenon. Um, so that's also hard, because some people might be like, oh, that's old news and that joke is no longer funny. Or this is a sensitive subject, we shouldn't be joking about it. So it's a very fine line with it. Comedy is such a scary, it's funny coming from horror. Comedy is such a scary thing to do, because it's horror. Something is going to unsettle someone, or someone is going to be scared. I mean, you don't know that for a fact, but there's a pretty good chance the material is going to make somebody feel something like that. But comedy is so scary, in the joke can just fall absolutely flat like a lead balloon, and there's no salvation for it. You just got to move on.
Boy, and I tell you, Saturday Night Live is famous for
Yeah.
that, having
Yeah.
having jokes
Womp womp.
that just that just fell on their face. And see, I have a different kind of comedy, and what mine is more off the cuff. Um,
Mhm.
I can't plan anything. As a matter of fact, I was going to tell they had a hurricane in California. Can you
Mhm.
imagine a hurricane in California? And I had a friend. I still have a hopefully I still have a friend
Same here. I
in,
got a lot of
in
friends in
San
California.
Diego, and I said, well, San Diego, yeah, and it's coming your way. And he said, well, it's not too bad here yet. And I said, well, you be careful, because Hillary's going to be right on top of you. And he said, I'm not going to take that joke at all. So, um, you know, I thought that was a kind of a funny joke,
Uh,
but it didn't play very well for him.
it was like brunch.
And, and
Playing off.
yeah, so I got to thinking, they really should not call events like that after a famous person who's in politics or something.
Yeah, or anyone.
Yeah, I
And
think,
yeah,
yeah, I agree.
it's what's hard is and it's it's to categorize them. I mean, because it's like I feel like the names alphabetically we go down, each alphabet letter, but I feel like it's also to quell anxiety because no one wants to be like hurricane 146 is coming. Like, I mean, I feel like that's kind of a downer, but if you say like hurricane Ira or something, which was also a really really terrible hurricane, but I think that
You,
that is
you know,
kind of like
I'm wondering. I'm wondering if after like Irma or the one that you mentioned and or several of the other ones, if people stopped naming their children those names because they
mhm,
were a catastrophic hurricane. I bet
yep.
you if you looked at the statistics, I'll bet you that people stopped naming their kids after that.
Yeah, or started to. Because
Now
there's,
that depends
you
upon
know,
your bent a little bit. If you're like in your case, you would do that just to see the look on people's faces.
yeah. Just for a minute. But like I said, I think that it's definitely something to um not only quell the anxiety of because obviously we don't want to number hurricanes because that just makes us feel sad, but also it's something to focus your like anger and your ire at. We've figuratized a a natural disaster by giving them a person's name so we can direct our emotions towards that person's name and kind of be able to unload or exercise whatever emotions we've got going on around it, because we'll always kind of speak as a to a person about that event as opposed to like hurricane 146.
Oh,
um
exactly.
I think
Exactly.
it's interesting.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you are listening to this and you'd like to ask Mo a question, you can pop into the comments and you can ask her a question about horror writing, about the book she's written, about maybe being a cognitive behavioral therapist,
Yes.
and all of that stuff. Because you've done quite a lot.
I have. I'm actually always refer to myself as the perpetual plate spinner, um, because there's always something to do. My mother and I were actually just talking about this the other day, and she was like, "You are a person that's like, what is that? I like that. I want to learn how to do that." And you just do it. And that's kind of how I've always been, especially with um, the therapy and looking into like mental health and marrying that with the genre that I work in. um, that's been like really really fun, especially with the mental health industry being what it is. Hopefully we have an uptick in accessibility for that. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, going seeing that we were all part of a global traumatic event a couple years ago. We have seen an uptick in accessibility, which is really important. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, I am all here to help.
We appreciate that because it is, you know, after COVID
Hmm.
and the pandemic, things changed.
Yeah.
People's minds have changed. Their thoughts about things have changed. They're, people that um, you had no right to expect that they were going to pass away just suddenly died,
Yes.
and it was on the news every day, and people were hiding under the covers of their house, and and then you had the the mask thing, and
Mhm.
you had the uh, all of that stuff. Could you, as a horror writer, come up
Mhm.
with something as horrific as that?
Um, Probably not. But I think that what's interesting about that in that same breath as, working as someone who creates those type of like horrific or very like tense environments, I think that we've spent so many decades watching films like that that I definitely feel like it took the world a minute to say, oh wait, this is actually a real thing that can happen to us. Watching like Contagion or whatever movies where like the virus gets out and,
The Andromeda strain was one of
yeah,
them.
and like absolutely. And I think it took us a while to be really realistic about it. And also to have the approaches that we had. Um, and even after we did, and after we saw the devastation that was really sweeping through our entire world, um, we still had others, and still to this day have others that aren't convinced that it was an actual thing that was really happening, which is unfortunate. But I think that our job as writers of a genre where people are supposed to be scared and is almost frightened into preparedness, which is a funny term that a friend and I were speaking about. It's it's almost where I feel like we've kind of prepped everyone for that. Like, this is what we do, and this is how we behave, and this is what happens before like the zombie outbreak, and this is how people behave, and this is what mass hysteria is, and make sure you're doing this and make sure you're doing that. It was a very scary time. And I think even in our content that we were watching on TV, we talked about that with horror having like that uptick in viewership, but also people really yearning for like sitcoms and
Yes.
documentaries about birds, like anything that was like lighthearted. Like, I will tell you, I watched everything David Attenborough ever made during the pandemic because I just wanted to know that the world was okay. The animals were going to make it if no one else. But it was just, I think it was very difficult for us to really understand what was happening all around us. But I don't think personally, and I don't know, um, going forward for even like the literary industry or even the television industry, how we display that type or that level of devastation on screen or in books again that doesn't have a sense of realism. It used to be fantastical before, and we couldn't imagine what it was like to live in something that was so scary that we couldn't leave, and then there was this, and so easily, like, we couldn't believe that, and that's what was cool about it because it was unbelievable and it couldn't happen to us. And I'm interested to see, and I don't think a lot of people have been successful with it, um, as of yet, in my personal opinion, but I'm interested to see how the industry in both literary and television and even movies give us something that is that devastating, or a world that is that devastating, to where we are either believing it or still fear it because we've already lived through it. So I'm
And for the
very
first
interested. Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree, and for the first time, this was something that wasn't, fantasy.
Mhm.
It wasn't something that could happen.
Mhm.
This was something that was happening, and it was when they were showing, trailers with refrigerators that were full of bodies,
Mhm.
because the morgues couldn't take. I mean, that's not even something that you would think is a
No.
thing, r-
Mm-mm.
but it was actually happening to us. And and I was talking to a 15-year-old writer who's into zombies. What
Mhm.
in the hell got us into zombies, and what is that all about?
Zombies. I love talking about zombies, and I
Good.
will tell you why. Because there is something about a human's obsession with control that I think when we turn the mirror or we turn the lens towards what we say a zombie is, which is like this either reanimated human that has passed away, or a person that is still living in some sort of animated state, whether they're still asleep or what have you. And that goes into certain particular um, cultures, religions that have that type of either myth or lore going on with them. But I think there's something very interesting about the fact that we can still move around and do the things that we need to do and have this really ferocious way about us that can't be controlled.
So
And I
so
think it's great.
okay. So I asked him, so I'll ask you, how how does one become a zombie? And he said,
Ooh.
Well, I'm not sure, and I've written it like this and like, but is it that you get bit by somebody? Is it
You
how do
know
you become
what?
a zombie?
You can, and I'm going to say this, and you know what? My apologies to the folks at home, but you can become a zombie any way you feel like becoming a zombie. Because I feel like it used to be, where, and it depends on culturally what you're talking about. If we're talking about something like, um, hoodoo or voodoo practices where their lore was like they were
Oh yeah,
reanimating people with particular substances or through rituals or prayer, and that was bringing this person back, or this person was given a substance to where they were very near death and thought that they were dead and then snapped out of it and went on with their lives, and everyone thought they were dead and buried alive and things like that. But and then we got into the biting was something, and I think that was really around the time of you have very like late Renaissance and 15, 16, 17th century books about that, where it was like almost like the universal monsters. Like that's how you became something. You got bitten, you became a werewolf. You got bitten, you became a vampire. You got all of these things was by you getting bitten. Now you get bitten, you're a zombie. So it was like, is it bloodborne? Who knows? But what who knows? And I feel like getting bitten is such a catch-all for all of it, because you think you get bitten by a vampire, you get bitten by a werewolf, you get bitten by a zombie. Like, just don't get bitten. Like, it should be that easy, right? I mean, who in your life, Kevin, is coming around you just with their mouth wide open ready to bite you? Not usually anybody. So
I
it's
have to
been
pay for
pretty
that
avoidable
generally.
for you so far, right? You've been able to not be bitten by
Y-
someone.
Yeah, I'd have to pay for that.
Right, it's the saying. I mean, it's not something that's readily available. Um, it's
Although I've got a premise for you. Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay. There's a new disease that comes out and it mimics death, but you're not really dead, but
Mhm.
everybody assumes you're dead. And so they bury you.
Yep.
And then and so all these people, or they cremate you. And
Ooh,
all these people are either being buried alive or they're being cremated, and you see them. And you know what I mean? You can take it from there. You're the horror writer.
that's so scary. Oh my God. Can you imagine being cremated alive?
Oh,
God, I don't even like when I'm in my car with my windows up on a hot day. I cannot imagine that. But being buried alive, I was telling my mother about this the other day because I have a obsession with idioms, and I love like etymology and figuring out where like phrases came from. And there was a fear that was kind of sweeping through, I think it was like 16th century, 17th century, um about people being buried alive.
yes,
And it was during that whole lore of like people were vampires, and you didn't know if people were like fae, if they had like if you had a fever and now you were acting out, people thought like a demon came into your home and stole your soul and left the demon soul inside of you, and then everyone would try to kill you. Like just hysteria on like a maximum level. And people were coming down with like really serious diseases and being like very near death and getting buried. And then people would say, I heard them screaming, and then they would look inside the coffin and the person had like tried to scratch their way out.
exactly. I've heard
So
that too.
yes, so what they started doing was when they would bury these people, they would attach a string around their big toe, and that string led to a pipe up I said upstairs, above ground, to a bell. So if there was any movement in the body, a bell would ring and everyone would have to furiously start digging to make sure this person was alive and rescue them, which is where the phrase "saved by the bell" came from.
Oh, I did not. I had no idea.
Isn't that
See,
interesting?
now I thought that was a boxing term.
I thought me too. But that's where it originated, was "saved by the bell," was that.
Wow, it's kind of like the old saying. I'm sure you're familiar with this one. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Yes.
because because the baby was the last one. They all took a bath
Bath
from the
and then
same
the
water.
oh,
A-
gross.
and because dad was, he got to go first because he was the
Yeah.
head of the household, and then all the kids and stuff, and then the baby was the last one. And if you if you um emptied the tub and you couldn't find the baby, it might have been at the bottom of the tub and you couldn't see it. See? See,
Oh my god.
now I now I'm scaring
Yes.
you.
I thought you were just like because when the when the babies had their bath, like then you can throw out the bath water because the baby's the last one to be washed, which is like absolutely disgusting. Like no wonder we had so much infanticide. They're like being bathed in everybody else's filth. Like
But
that's
yeah,
horrific. But they're at the bottom of the tub. Absolutely not.
oh, but when you think about it, and I don't know how much of a student of history you are, but if you think about what we as human beings have done to each other
Mm-hmm.
over the course of how we have tortured each other and killed each other, it's it it is beyond the horror movies of today. I think
Yeah.
wasn't there one called Saw or something that
Oh, see, I watched the first one. I will tell you, torture horror like that. I wrote a story about it, obviously. It's one of my stories, but it's not my huge bag to watch. So I have a little bit of a squeamy feeling when those types of movies come out. I won't choose them. But I'm not gonna yuck somebody's yum if you that's what you like. That I just can't watch can't watch them. I can't watch people being horrible to other people for the sake of just being horrible to other people. Um, that doesn't sit well with me at all. But if you like it, that's great.
I don't think there's anything to like about it, quite
Yeah,
frankly, because it is, we fortunately we stopped doing stuff like crucifying people
yeah,
and doing stuff like that. But it's, I mean, which was a particularly horrible way to die. Uh,
yeah, just a little bit.
yeah. So,
Just
but
a little bit.
now in your writing, do a lot of people die, or is this more about suspense and?
Yeah, a lot of people die. I mean, this book, my book only has 8 stories in it, so there's only 8 deaths. So I mean, if you think about it, and
Oh, that's
sometimes
not
there's
bad.
multiple deaths. Sometimes there's more than 8. There actually is more than 8 now that I count on my little hands. There's more than 8. So enjoy those at your leisure. But it
And
is not something that is absolutely horrific for horrific's sake, because we are dealing with human beings that are trying to justify their behavior, right? So um, I think that they're still very much enjoyable deaths. I guess
but
enjoy them.
by the way, we're talking with Moshaty, and if you want to go to her website, by the way, the name of the book is
Love the Sinner: 8 Disquieting Stories Bound in Sin.
Ooh, Love the Sinner.
Yeah.
Now, did any of them go to? I was talking to somebody earlier today, and we were talking about um, priests and
Hmm.
in the olden days, and other people that were put in power over children,
Yes.
and especially in the conservative Christian movement,
Hmm.
you could have been a pedophile
Hmm.
and been quote unquote forgiven,
Hmm.
and then you no longer would be subject to being a pedophile.
Sure.
But that's what they want you to believe. But
Hmm.
deep down inside, they were still had those urges, and so we as a people, we don't treat everything, I think, as we should, as far as if you do something like that,
Hmm.
if you molest children, I
Mhm.
don't think there's any saving you from that.
No, I'm gonna put you in the pile of not being forgiven. Personally, myself, that's not gonna be a thing for me. I mean, I don't think that, and I feel like on a global scale, I feel like harm to children in any way, shape, or form is and should be frowned upon. Um, but also I feel like, kind of having this like blanket absolution um, is really, really harmful, um, even outside of that particular crime, because we have that a lot for people that are, saved or changed or have found, a new type of religion, or maybe a further along in their belief system. And we've been given, have been given carte blanche for their previous crimes or predilections, and that's really, really terrifying. And I think that that is really the kind of baseline for my book, is the fact that we are able, as human beings, we can look at someone, and I, as someone who from many years ago was very interested in forensic files and true crime, and like trying to understand the motivations of people that commit heinous crimes. And these same people would be with their friends conversing about, oh my gosh, I can't believe this like mass murderer is on the loose and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, in their own backyard is someone that met their end with them. And I said, you can really, we can justify as human beings whatever act we're going through and we want to exude. As long as we can justify it, then we don't have to make any apologies for it. Or we should be able to say, well, that's just how I am.
Ted
And
Bundy did that.
yeah, that's just how I am. You can't help me. And I
It,
feel like that is such a cloak that we all kind of hide behind. Not on a murdering aspect. We're not all doing that. But I feel like that is a trait we all have, where being forced with what our behavior is or what our urges are, that makes somebody else brings out discomfort in someone else, or we're being asked to change or even just look at our behavior. And how many times in an argument with a loved one or a friend or a romantic partner have we thrown up our hands and said, well, that's just how I am? We're all guilty of doing that, and we're asking someone to accept our faults even though we know that they're faults, but we don't get to say that out loud. So we have to say, that's just how I am. So that's also so scary, is just being like, I'm not going to make any corrections, I just need you to absolve the things I've done or intend to continue to do. And that's really it.
I have to ask you this because you are also a behavioral therapist,
Yes.
and in that work, I've 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 read stories of Ted Bundy. He
Hmm.
was from up here, by the way,
Mm.
and he started at Lake Sammamish. I remember hearing on the radio that there was a girl missing at Lake Sammamish, and there was a guy in a Volkswagen that turned out to be him, and she was one of the first that he took and
Interesting.
killed. But in the course of his life, the numbers of people that he killed and the heinous way he did it, and then what he would do to the bodies
Hmm.
after they were gone, and even go back later
Hmm.
revisit the dead bodies. What makes a human being capable of being able to do something like that?
I think the capability really comes from, and not everything, but predominantly things stem from either a childhood event or that child's environment, of what is deemed okay, or what they're shown as kind of moving the needle. Like kids will always kind of test your patience or what they can get away with. And in those type of environments, when you have someone, a child who is very calculated, um, and definitely in that mental capacity of being manipulative and um, borderline anhedonic, which is really lacking emotion or emotional flatline. They don't tie their emotion to that act that they're doing. It's just something that either quells a particular sensation, like the revisiting is almost like a trophy aspect. Like
Uh,
there's other things that I would like to do to this, and it's very, very, very terrifying to think about it in that way, that we as humans can have that capacity to exterminate each other, but also continue to celebrate that fact, and that is also going to be a form of control. um and most of the serial murderers that have been famous for revisiting, moving the bodies once they've buried them, or creating a game, has really been a sense of a borderline of being in complete control of the situation, and the almost palpable desire to be caught, because it's only sensational, and it only feels more motivating if somebody knows what I've done, and now they're looking for me, and now I get to be creative, and now I get to escalate, and now I get to do this. um and I think that is that built-in human need to strive to be the best at what you're doing. And that's so scary. It's
it's a
scary.
competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you put it in that context, like, I'm a runner and I'm training and I won this contest, and now next year I'm going to be a little bit faster and a little bit faster because someone else is kind of on my tail. It's kind of like that, where, it's the sensationalism and the notoriety and handiwork, and where they started giving, criminals calling cards because they were doing the same thing with every, thing that they
Yep.
had. So it was like, it was
Jack
like,
the Ripper,
yeah, Jack
the
the
Boston
Ripper,
Strangler.
BTK, Boston Strangler, Son of Sam. Like, everyone had a different way of doing things. Um, and if anyone out there has watched Mindhunter, which was on Netflix, and it was how they were putting together how to profile serial killers, with the FBI. It's still on Netflix, I think. I don't think it's going to get a third season, so be prepared for season 2 to have a very heartbreaking cliffhanger, and like somebody just unplugged the TV while you were watching it. Like, I was watching that. It's going to feel like that. But
Well,
it's a very interesting look, and it's based on a true story of one of the gentlemen that helped create that type of forensic profiling for serial killers, with the FBI. So take a peek into that, because that is not comfortable at
you
all.
know, and now this I clearly don't understand,
Hmm.
is that if you do that to people,
Hmm.
and there was a guy up here, I forget his name. It was, and they executed him by hanging.
Mm.
And he'd killed several people, and he was so upset that they were going to hang him that he lost control. They had to put him on a backboard, and they actually strapped him to a backboard and put the
Hmm.
backboard up, and then hung him from that. And Bundy cried before they executed him, but he killed all these people.
Hmm.
And how could he think that eh, he was going to get sympathy, or what, or
Yeah,
why was he
it's
terrified of death when he'd done it to so many other
yeah.
people, I wonder.
And that's like the emotional reactivity piece, is having a numbness of action, where you're not having, like I said, the emotion is not attached to the action, but that does not mean the emotion is not attached to the penance that needs to be paid. Because when you're doing this action, it's not in their mind that they're going to eventually get caught or have to pay for this. That's not top of mind. It's just getting this done, and having this sense of control, and having it, in the crudest of terms, scratch whatever itch that they have, doing these acts does. It's a completely different side of the coin when they're on the other end of the stick to say, or the noose, or what's going on,
Exactly.
the injection. But I think that's what's scary about it, is that the callousness of which these acts are done, and then watching them break down is mind-boggling. It doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense to us.
It doesn't make any sense to me. But by the way, Mo, it's been such a pleasure having you.
Oh yeah, this has been fun. I always love talking to you, Kevin.
I need to come back and have you on again.
Yeah, we should do it.
Will you come back?
I will.
Okay, well, awesome, because we got so much more that we can talk about. And
I know.
And every show what I love about what I do is every show is completely different.
Yeah.
Even if I'm talking to the same person.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to get out. We got a lot to go through.
Exactly. Is there anything that you'd like to tell our audience before we go?
Well, the book just came out on July 5th with Bridget's Gate Press. It is a short story collection called Love the Sinner. 8 disquieting stories bound in sin. Can be found any of your online outlets that you get your books from: Waterstone, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It will hopefully be on store shelves at the end of this year. And I also have 2 books coming out next year under Spooky House Press, which is a 2-volume collection of short stories based on the tarot. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, you're going to have to come back for that one.
Yay! That's fun.
Because the tarot, absolutely.
That's fun.
Absolutely. And I would love to have you back, and we'll play. I've got another interview that I'm going to do, and the author, his name is Frank Giamonaco, and the name of the book is Lord of the Wood. It's about Sasquatch. Right up your alley.
I love a Sasquatch story. And you guys in the PNW, I'm sure, have a lot of Sasquatch stories.
So I know people that have said that they were that Sasquatch was there with them.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Sasquatch.
He said he was in a tent, and he felt the Sasquatch lean into the tent, and
oh my god, absolutely not.
Bye. No, I need a diaper.
No,
so
this is why
we've been talking. I know you can come up with all kinds of bad things that can happen to you. So don't go into the woods, ladies and gentlemen.
Nope.
Moshaty, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Thank you.
And
this was great.
We will have you back.
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Wait right there, and I'll be right back. Thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of PositiveTalkRadio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named PositiveTalkRadio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we got.